Hey everybody, today we are going to be making Mamaw's biscuits. So go ahead and preheat your oven to 500 degrees. I know that's a lot, but it's what it needs. You're going to get 2 cups of self-rising flour, a half cup of Crisco, and a cup of buttermilk. And this is my homemade buttermilk. So if you have never made homemade buttermilk, go check out my butter and buttermilk video, and I'll show you how to make your own homemade buttermilk. So first, you are going to sift your flour as best as you can. You don't want any clumps in your biscuits. Let's just make sure it's really fluffy. Like I said, if you don't sift it, you'll end up with little bitty chunks of flour. You want your biscuits to be as soft as possible. So just discard those. Next is your half a cup of Crisco. My grandmother doesn't even measure this out. She just takes a huge lumpful of Crisco and goes with it. And they're always delicious. Half a cup of Crisco. It's easiest if you have a pastry cutter. If you don't have one, you can use a fork or you can use your hands. But you are just going to dump it into your flour. And combine it. Okay, and you want just enough to where if you pick up some of the flour and you pinch it together, it stays together. That Crisco is keeping it together. So I actually need a little bit more because mine is not staying together as well as I would like. So I just do another spoonful. It's going to look like you have little crumbs in your flour. That's what you want. Ah, that's a lot better. Okay, so when you pick up the flour and you pinch it together, it's staying together. Okay, you're going to take 1 cup of buttermilk. And you're only going to pour half in there for right now. I like to mix this with my hands because it's just easier to know the texture. You can use a dough hook. And the more you make these, the more you'll learn the texture that you want to have. That's why we're not using all of the buttermilk yet, because sometimes if you use all the buttermilk, if your measurements aren't exactly correct, your dough will be way too runny. So as you can see, it's not really staying together yet, so we need some more buttermilk. And I'm just going to pour a little bit more in there, okay, until it forms a dough that stays together. Your dough will be really sticky at first too. Don't let that alarm you. The more you kind of work it, the less sticky it gets. All right, you're going to let your dough sit for just a few minutes. In the meantime, you can be getting your surface floured and you can be greasing your pan. So I like to use cast iron. It just works better for me. I get the Crisco and I just give it a good layer of Crisco. Keeps the biscuits from sticking. All right. This is good and Criscoed. Now I'm just going to spread a little bit of flour on my work surface. Okay, so after your dough has rested a little bit, you're going to place it right on top, and you're going to start your lamination process. So this means in lamination, you want to see the folds in the biscuits. You want to see the different layers. So you're going to start folding. Okay, after you've given it a few folds, we're going to kind of press it out. You want your dough about a 1/2 inch thick. That's going to make tall biscuits. If you get it too shallow or too thin, your biscuits are going to be rock hard. I know from experience. All right, you're going to need a biscuit cutter or something round that can cut. My grandmother actually uses an old tin can, and it has always worked for her. So you just press it in, give it a little wiggle, and there's your first biscuit. Here we're going to place this on your pan. You want to put them as tight together as possible. All right, so all these extra bits that you don't really have enough room to do a circle, you're going to get them back together, squish them, pat it back down, and go again. Now you're going to come down to your last little bit. It's not quite big enough to do with the cutter. You're just going to kind of shape it. All right, so you want these as close together as possible because that's going to help them rise. So you're going to push them in and get everybody touching. All right, we have our biscuits. Time to go in the oven. These biscuits are going to stay in for about 15 to 20 minutes until they get browned. And what about these? Do not look delicious. Homemade Southern biscuits.